Well, what we're watching is the destruction of the U.S. military, and what we're going to end up seeing, Tucker, is thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of Americans die. Those are the stakes of the game we're playing here. We don't need a military that's woman-friendly. We don't need a military that's gay-friendly, with all due respect to the Air Force. We need a military that's flat-out hostile. We need a military full of Type A men who want to sit on a throne of Chinese skulls. But we don't have that now. We can't even get women off of naval vessels. That should be step one, but most of them are already pregnant anyway.
All right. Name is Ben Burgis. This is Give Them an Argument. I'm joined by our producer, Kelly Carey, and graphic designer, J. Andrew World, and producer, Jake Abbott. I mean, I don't know if Kelly should be here. I'm confident that Jake and Andy are Type A men who dream of sitting on thrones of Chinese skulls.
Yeah, that's what my dream toilet is, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I love how Type A has been folded into that masculine myth making. We're all Type A over here, and ready to fight.
Yeah. So the voice you just heard was Jesse Kelly, who's a conservative talk radio host, saying, I think actually the most luridly insane thing I've ever heard on Tucker Carlson. Could that be right?
Possibly. I was like taken back by the whole pregnancy thing. I was not expecting that all the women on the ships are pregnant, but all the women on the ships are pregnant. Like you get on a ship, you're pregnant. This is amazing.
Do we have stats on that? Man.
Oh, Kelly, you're muted.
Oh no! Silencing the women in this segment. Gosh.
Bad luck.
I silenced myself. So there's a lot going on here, guys. And no, this is absolutely not the most insane segment that's ever been on Tucker Carlson, because I've watched a lot, and some of them have called for genocide, so this isn't it. But okay, this guy he's really created a whole like classification of person that he thinks exists, a classification of men that he thinks exists in the United States in large enough numbers to create an army. And this isn't Type A men. It's pretty clear that the only people that fit this classification are literal psychopaths and sociopaths, which are those aren't actual designations. Like they're called antisocial personalities because they have like a lot of overlap and everything like that. But the common denominators, they don't have any feelings towards other people or living things often. So it's just like killing machines. And like, would that be good for an army? No, because they would just kill everything. That's not what we're doing.
Yeah. I mean, I would think like, okay, I don't like, what the U.S. military does in the world. I don't think we should have this huge empire and all this stuff. But like, forget that for a second. Like any army, any appreciate that, Garrett. Any situation, anywhere in the world, like the most legitimate possible use of an army ever. I mean, if possible, you really want to like do psychologically screen out the people who want to sit on thrones of Chinese skulls, because if you don't, for one thing, you're going to have to be punishing like a shit ton of like low-level war crimes after the fact, because like giving the Chinese skull fantasists heavy weapons and unleashing them where they could use it just seems like, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm just revealing myself as not being sufficiently Type A here, but it sounds like bad news.
Type B.
The only good thing about it would be that when we send people to war, it's extremely abusive because they don't come back the same and we don't do anything for them. So if they're psychotic, they'll come back the same.
if getting out of the military was like getting out of jury duty, that's what I would say going in. You know, like I'm looking for like a necklace of Chinese skulls, and then be like, all right, this person's not fit. But I did look up the Jesse Kelly show on iHeartRadio. His bio is unfiltered and unapologetic. Jesse Kelly is the greatest mind of the 21st century, now on demand. From history to politics to pizza. Whether you're a veteran like Jesse or just a good old-fashioned red-blooded American, this show has something for everyone. One of the greatest minds of the 21st century.
That also fits with what I was talking about because, I mean, I've learned about politics over my life and taken an interest in it. And I mean, but honestly, I think that what interested me about politics in the first place was my interest in unwell people. And I do take an interest in that and stories about that. So, you know, I'm a little bit more tuned into that than anything else. And narcissistic personality disorder is common in, you know, this stuff. It's pretty different because those people do tend to have relationships with people. But seeing the world in this way, it makes sense.
Well, I'm glad that somebody has political experience because I have none. So thanks for having me anyway, Ben.
Yeah, no, I saw the look in your eyes that told me that you dream of the mountains of Chinese skulls, and, you know, and I thought you had one too. Yeah, I mean, all right, so I totally believe you that there are much worse Tucker Carlson segments, but I think this might be the most insane comment I happened to have seen on it.
He said he thought it would be good if we killed all homeless people. That was the actual solution. He didn't use the words final solution, which would have made it more, I don't know, it probably would have spread further, but that's his idea, is he wants to kill homeless people.
Yeah, there you go.
That was worse. Can I get that's worse?
Yes, that is worse.
Thank you.
I mean, you know, then we could get, I mean, I guess there are follow-up questions there about what he's going to do with the skulls afterwards, but
drones. We could get Jesse Kelly guy. Oh, it's so disgusting.
No, I mean, my favorite thing about that clip is while Jesse Kelly is saying the most serial killerish shit ever, Tucker is just doing his like really serious listening look.
I don't like, everyone kind of describes it as his listening look, and I just think he looks like he doesn't understand. Like that's I don't understand anything that's happening look. That's most people's like what look, and it's just his serious look, and I'm just like, God, you're such an idiot. But
there's nothing going on behind those eyes.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And
okay.
Another question that I had, and I know that this is just incredibly morbid, but like, do you know what it would take to build a throne of skulls? Like, I don't want to be too there's no way this isn't too morbid, but like, so I've been watching a lot of serial killer stuff, and like I just said, I like if somebody does something like you know, psychology of people doing like outrageous things, like I just can't resist it. But you would have to burn bodies for like a week or something.
Yeah, it'd be a really inefficient use of resources.
Then you'd have to get glue or something. After
like lye and I actually did a sculpture using cow bones once, and it's a messy process to get the last fatty meat off those bones.
I'm practicing my Tucker face while listening to this.
Yeah,
you should hear what Jay Andy says in the post game. You know, I gotta.
Yeah, you think this is bad?
Yeah. Okay, so I do want to bring on in just a minute Paul Prescod, who's a candidate for the Pennsylvania State Senate, who I actually don't think wants to make a throat out of anybody's skulls. But
Doubt that.
or if so, he at least wouldn't say so on national television. So definitely gets some points for that.
It is Pennsylvania.
Yeah. All right. All right. Fair enough. Thank you so much, guys.
I'm from Pennsylvania. I just want to say anyone in Pennsylvania.
Got one more skull thing.
I can no. I mean, I can say that. I'm not like insulting everyone in Pennsylvania. I'm making fun of myself.
Okay. So. All right.
All right. Okay. Bye, guys.
All right. Bye, Kelly. All right. That was, median Throat of Skulls loving Pennsylvania voter, Kelly Carey. But we are now joined by Paul Prescod. How are you doing, Paul?
Good. As you can see in the background, skull free.
Nice.
Just so voters know. But I apologize for the creepy shadowy lighting. It's the best I can do right now. I'm not in my usual setting, but there you go.
Yeah, fair enough. So this is not the first or the second time you have been on the show, which and even before the show existed, actually, I talked to you on Dead Pundits,
right.
And definitely all those conversations, I know had an impact on me. If for anybody who saw the debate I did with Charlie Kirk, when I like the one time I lost my cool, the entire thing was when he started like shitting at the post office, and my inner Paul Prescod started to come out. Right. I got mad about it.
Glad I'm making a difference out here.
Yeah. But it is the first time I've talked to you since you've been running for office. This is exciting. Tell me about this.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild, right? I didn't see this coming 2 years ago, and I don't think a lot of other people did. But yeah, where should I start? Do you want me to just go into it? Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people have known me. I mean, surely from the Jackman Show, my writings for that. But more so, a lot of my work was in the labor movement before running for office. So I've been a public school teacher in Philadelphia's public schools. Before that, as a student, I was involved mostly as like a student labor activist.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that kind of has shaped my worldview generally. And also, even as I've engaged with DSA, my chapter in Philadelphia has been co-chair of our labor committee and building relationships with the local labor movement and, helping them out on certain campaigns, being with them in solidarity. And I think as a teacher, there's just no overstating just the level of disinvestment we've seen in our public schools. And this is nothing unique to Philadelphia. It's also not, sometimes people think it's just an urban thing, but take Pennsylvania, I mean, there's many, rural areas that are going through it. I mean, basically just as bad as Philadelphia schools are. It's common in our schools, we'll have 35, 40 kids in a class. I mean, our building conditions has really been in the news a lot lately. I mean, we're talking mold, lead, asbestos, buildings literally like ceilings caving in on students and things like that. Schools without nurses. We've had some years children literally die during the school day because there's not funding for a full-time nurse on duty. So this has just become the norm, and it's only getting worse in Philadelphia. And I truly have believed and still believe that, we keep on this track, I think we'll be looking at a totally privatized school district, whether it's in 15 years, 30 years. This happened in New Orleans, as I'm sure many people know. Right after Katrina, they took that opportunity to make it so there's not a single public school left in New Orleans. So I think we're one crisis away from that, and we need to reverse that. And I'll say that for so many years, I was someone that really was not that engaged in electoral politics. I was not very inspired by it. I mean, I would vote, I would do the thing, and that would be it. But definitely starting with Bernie in 2015, 2016, that really inspired me. And then also other candidates, both at the national level and even in the local level in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, definitely inspired me and kind of showed that, there's another way you can engage in electoral politics, like as a movement building project, kind of as an amplifier of a movement. There's also another way even once getting in office, you can govern. And one thing, it's funny, I would always talk with my friends in Philadelphia, different political people, and I would always say, I think one thing that's missing from this new wave of left candidates, which is really great, is just people that truly come from the labor movement, and really have that background, and can have that support from the beginning. Because something that's really tough is that, and this is really not candidates' fault, but often labor will be hesitant to back a challenger of a longtime incumbent, even if that challenger on paper has better labor politics. There's a variety of reasons for that. I mean, it gets a little complicated. If you have a certain relationship with an incumbent, you see them as a friend of labor in different ways. Not wanting to damage that or risk that is a real concern unions want to have, or just being convinced that someone is actually a serious challenger. So I've kind of just seen that as a need of, like, we need more challengers that have that firm footing in the labor movement and can bring that on the campaign. And I always joke, maybe it was quarantine made me crazy, but I kind of had the decision that I think, given the kind of networks I've been involved with, I think I can mount a challenge that is really needed. And I think bringing the background of as a public sector worker, as someone that cares about the public sector and labor, I think it was something that just made sense for me to do it in this moment.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So, and I will, compromise whatever, extremely thin veneer of independence I have here and say that I mean, I think I'd actually got an email from you sometime back saying you were thinking about doing this, but when I saw that you actually had, like, I think I set up a $27 a month, like, recurring donation that day, which I would encourage people who are watching to do that, because that's the easiest, most obvious way that if you're an outside of the district, you can help out. I do want to talk a little bit about what you're advocating, and on the broadly the subject of education. I saw an article that you wrote for Jacobin recently that I liked a great deal. Do we have the graphic of this? Yeah, here we go.
Yep.
So it's called "Tax Wealthy Private Universities Now." So tell me about what the idea is here.
Yeah, well, and this has been a big problem, and this exists in my district. So my district, well, I'll say a little bit about it first. It's kind of interesting because there's a little bit of everything. So it includes the area around the University of Pennsylvania, of course, an elite Ivy League school, kind of heavily gentrified area. It also includes a more working class part of Southwest Philadelphia, and then some parts of Delaware County, which is like surrounding suburbs. So the district is large. It has a little bit of everything, both demographically, geographically, and things like that. But University of Penn does exist within the district, and they played a very damaging role in Philadelphia. Mainly is that they get to be designated as a nonprofit. And this is many universities, even the most elite universities. They are considered a, quote, mega nonprofit. And in that means they do not need to pay any taxes, any property taxes. And of course, how do we fund education in this country? Unfortunately, is property taxes. And University of Penn, which is an elite wealthy institution, does not pay property taxes. And they have an endowment now. So before COVID, it was around $14.5 billion with a B. That was their endowment that is not taxed. And since COVID alone, their endowment grew by $5 or $6 billion. It's now around $20 billion. And so this is all money that's just sitting there that's not taxed. I mean, the idea is that the endowments are used for things around the university, which is true in some small sense. I mean, a lot of times what they tout is they use it for helping with financial aid. But if you look at the tuition at Penn and what on average their students owe in loans, clearly that endowment is not doing anything. So, one way around this, and I was actually involved in a campaign in Philadelphia to make Penn pay what's called pilots, payments in lieu of taxes. So these are voluntary payments institutions like Penn can make to a city. And many other elite colleges have agreed to make some payments like this. Now, of course, the problem is you cannot rely on a voluntary payment. You can't really budget for it. They can pull it at any time. But Penn, under pressure, was pressured to make a commitment of $100 million over 10 years to Philly's public schools, which sounds like a lot, but I mean, that's $10 million a year. Now, if they were made to just pay property taxes, we calculated that a modest tax would be $40 million a year to our schools. And so what I advocate for in this article is that you just simply change the tax status to a 501c7, and that is reserved for private clubs. And I think the argument is that universities like University of Penn operate like a private club. I mean, their facilities are not largely open to the public. It's really only for their members, or AKA their students and staff and faculty. So like really, they're not. It's hard to make the argument that all their resources and facilities are for a public benefit. So if you classify them as a 501c7, you will be able to tax them, make them pay property taxes. And again, I think we should target these like mega wealthy institutions. I mean, Harvard, Yale, those are other ones where their endowments are in the billions. And I think you could actually get, in terms of average people, bipartisan support. I mean, I can imagine, and we should look at the right wing has been cynically doing this. I mean, Tom Cotton proposed a bill. I forget all the details around taxing.
Yeah, I remember this though.
Yeah, Ivy Leagues, and Trump actually passed something. It was very mild and was not significant. But, and of course, their argument is more just that targeting the university as an elite cultural institution, but I think there's some real something there to work with in terms of like, they really are just like hoarding money. And we should tax that. And I think average voters, if they're in a so-called red district, would really agree with that and really see the need for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, my preferred solution would be to nationalize it and absorb it as a branch of Penn State. But
Right.
that's short of that, you might be able to get more buy-in for this, in the immediate term. So the couple minutes we have left, you want to just run through a little bit of the other things that you're advocating in this campaign?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, really the heart of it is public investment. And I mean, Pennsylvania, it's not unique to other states, but just a huge problem of our wealthiest corporations not paying taxes, or they get out of it by what's called the Delaware tax loophole. You set up a fake headquarters in Delaware, you don't have to pay taxes. And we're talking about, corporate giants like Comcast that make $25 billion in 1 quarter of 2020. Pennsylvania is one of the biggest natural gas producing states where, especially these last 20 years, our natural gas companies do not pay taxes at all to the state. And so, at the heart of it is really, we got to go after that revenue. We need to tax the rich. And I think we need to name the enemy to fund everything that we want to fund. And so education, of course, will be central in this race. And, my opponent is someone that is a big school privatizer. He's loved by the same PACs that supported Betsy DeVos, Trump's former education secretary. He's also someone cozy with the fossil fuel interest that does not want them to be taxed at all. So education will be central, and of course labor. And I think one thing I'm really excited about, and I did my last segment on the Jackman Show on this, is the opportunity at the state level to do Green New Deal, essentially legislation, and create a lot of clean jobs with the support from labor. And I think being in a role, and this is something I'd be looking forward to after getting elected, really facilitating that conversation and getting some things going, and really building that trust between labor and climate activists. The sky is really the limit of how many jobs you could create, whether that's geothermal, whether that's expanding public transit, building retrofits, wind, solar. There's a lot we can do, and I think really moving that ball forward, and I think getting specific about it. That's what the left needs to do now, and I say this all the time, but I think most union leaders in the building trades, their take on it is like, look, Green New Deal sounds nice, just transition sounds nice, but like, show me the money and show me the numbers that we can actually do this and involve us in the process. And that would be something, it's obviously critically important about, where we're at with the climate, but really making that happen, and that a big part of the campaign, both before and after the election, is something I'm really excited about.
Nice. Where can people find your campaign, website, so they can, if anybody's watching Philadelphia, they can get involved.
Yeah.
If everybody else, they can donate. Where can they find your stuff?
Yeah, just very simply, paulprescod.com. I see Liv there. She'll be one of my great canvassers. Paulprescod.com, and that's PRESCOD as in David. You'll find a platform where you can get involved and donate. And again, until we have publicly funded elections, it's unfortunate, but the money really does matter. So, anything you can do will help. Also keep in mind, and my finance director always tells me this, the $27 thing is great for someone like Bernie when there's millions of people watching. But, a race like this, we'll thrive on triple digit or more contributions. Obviously, we'll take whatever you can give, but you know, I'm actually really relying on the National Progressive Left Network for fundraising because obviously, you know, my district, you got to be in my district to vote. But for fundraising, you know, this left media ecosystem and network is actually extremely important. So really, paulprescod.com, you know, whatever you can do to give. You can sign up to volunteer if you're in Pennsylvania or even in New York. I got people in New York who are going to take a trip over to Canvas. So definitely do that if you're able to.
Nice. All right. Thank you so much, Paul.
All right. Thanks, Ben.
All right. That was Paul Prescod, who is a multiple times returning champion here and is now a candidate for the Pennsylvania State Senate. So you should check him out. Want to say before we bring on Emma, a couple of things that didn't get to earlier. First of all, there is a review that came out of my new book by Matt McManus. You should check out in REO magazine. It's called Seeing Hitchens Clearly. You know, Matt's a good writer. I think he got what's going on in the book. And if again, the book comes out actually before the next episode because we're not doing one next Monday. So we want to check that out. That's redemmas.org. Of course, you can also pre-order it from Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all those places. But Red Emmas is a worker-owned bookstore in Baltimore where you can order it from online. I know they've already started shipping out copies, and we do like to support them as much as all possible. So again, that's redemmas.org. I should also mention that I have a new article out in Jacobin called Petty Bureaucracy, Become a Socialist, which is just about making this very simple point that there are all these right-wing arguments against expansive social programs that lean on this rhetoric of opposing expansive bureaucracy and do you want to create an army of bureaucrats and all of this stuff. But bureaucrats get their power from means testing, from people having to jump through hoops to qualify for social services. If things are universal, you've taken away that power. That's the point of that article. All right, so bring on Emma Vigeland, who is now has been on the show a couple times, but not in a while, and is on the Majority Report now, which is exciting. How are you doing, Emma?
I'm doing well. How about you, Ben? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So since I am a cruel person, I like to subject people to a lot of content that they can't, unsee or unthink. Once they get on here.
You're a sadist, as you should be.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So I, in looking for that content, other day I was like, you know what? Who I haven't heard from for a while? Jordan Peterson. I wonder what's going on with Jordan Peterson. Jake, what is going on with Jordan Peterson? Do we have?
Hey, Dad, what's your news?
Well, I'm announcing my tour for next year. It begins January 25th. We're going to do 40 cities in the U.S., and then we'll hit Canada, Europe, Southeast Asia, including Australia and New Zealand. 150 cities or so in total, like the last tour. Beyond order, 12 more rules for life.
So there are now 24 rules for life. There used to just be 12, but now there are 24.
Why is he dressed like he's in the Dead Poet Society?
Very good question. I don't know.
Why is he like an old-timey college professor from the 1920s? So are these 12 rules, as Peter Reed asked, are these additional rules, or are they they're more tailored?
These seem to be additional rules. So yeah, there were the original 12 rules. Like, you could see his politics poking out a little bit around the edges. I think there's something about not trying to change the world until you've set your house in perfect order. But most of them were just like, sit up straight, look people in the eye, clean your room, things like that. Sure, I mean, it's not terrible. it's pet cats when you see them in the street. I think that was one of the rules. Most of it's not terrible.
How often do you see cats in the street? I mean, they're either roaming about, not really wanting to interact with people, or they're in homes.
Well, apparently Jordan Peterson runs into friendly stray cats, and I mean it must be fairly often because it makes it into the top 12 list of rules for life. So it has to come up every now and again.
Yeah, so I got an email from him, not from him, but from Live Nation the other day, advertising his tour in New York City or in the surrounding areas the other day. And if you were as sadistic as perhaps you claim, Ben, you would crowdfund some money for myself and maybe you or some of the MR crew, some of your friends to go attend and get obliterated drunk. But I mean, who knows?
Yeah, that is definitely it's definitely a thought that getting blitzed and watching Jordan Peterson tour for 2022. But just as a preview of what you can look forward to if we do that, I looked into this, and these ones, at least some of them, seem a lot more overtly political. Here's the very first rule at the beginning of the new 12 rules. Do not carelessly denigrate social institutions or creative achievement. Now I understand.
What is careless?
I don't know. I guess people are denigrating social institutions, and he feels like they're doing it carelessly. And you might think, okay, I don't really know what that means. I don't know why he's clumping together social institutions and creative achievement. I don't know what counts as careless. So, flip through the book a little bit to find what he says in explanation of it.
Yeah, I'm sure that it has to do with social institutions that involve men. I got a young men.
Well, I visited a restaurant in Toronto, he writes, with my wife, son, and daughter while writing this. As I made my way to my party's table, a young waiter asked if he might say a few words to me. He told me that he'd been watching my videos, listening to my podcast, and reading my book, and he had, in consequence, changed his attitude towards his comparatively lower status, but still useful and necessary job. He had ceased criticizing what he was doing or himself for doing it, decided instead to be grateful and seek out whatever opportunities presented themselves right there before him. He made up his mind to become more diligent and reliable and to see what would happen if he worked as hard as he could. He told me with an uncontrived smile that he had been promoted 3 times in 6 months.
So it seems like Jordan taught him to be a good old cog in the capital machine. Good for him.
Yeah. All I could think when I read that is, man, I don't know why those Starbucks workers in Buffalo bothered with the union. Like, apparently, if you just stop complaining and you feel more positive vibes about the place that you work and you smile more or you hustle more, then everything's going to work out for you.
Yeah, I mean, or maybe he just figured, hey, time to smoke some pot before work. That makes things easier. It really does. The promotion figures seem a little fishy here. I would imagine that Jordan's embellishing for a dramatic effect, but that's the point, right? As you mentioned, these anecdotes on their own, it's okay, this is a self-help thing, even though self-help is really just a commodification of how can you exist in this society that's trying to kill you. But on the individual level, it's not helpful to, criticize people for seeking self-help or looking to different ways to make their existence a bit more palatable. Yeah. I mean, that's not, you look upward in those instances. But for him, it always seems to come back to one, it's targeted just towards white men, young men. And then you have pair it with the videos on, what's wrong with women here. Not so helpful. But 2, it's not, when you take that anecdote and you pair it with don't challenge systems, that means, okay, just be better in this oppressive system. And that is not something that we as leftists are in favor of.
Yeah, I mean, again, I have no issue with self-help. I have met, plenty of people in my life who could stand to have somebody tell them to clean their room and stand up with their, I've been to a bunch of DSA meetings. I've met people who could take that advice, right? But,
right, exactly.
But I guess the reason this story, putting aside the question of whether this is a real person and he's relayed this accurately and all that, but I guess the reason that this anecdote skeezes me out is that there's this implication, not just oh, hey, sure, what's the find ways to give this guy advice about what he can do. Great, I'm all for that. But that the sort of basic thing, the basic problem, if you work at a restaurant, you have a job like that and you're unhappy about your job, the basic problem is that you shouldn't be unhappy about it, that you fix that everything's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. And so that's kind of circles back to what I was saying initially as well. This is all about how can you be the most efficient member of our capitalist system that you can be in. And it's, again, everybody has to make a living. It's
Sure.
not about the individual. It's just, why does this kind of talk appeal to someone like Ben Shapiro or other right-wingers that we talk about here? Because again, these individual things, when you silo them, as you mentioned, make your bed, clean your room, do your laundry, shave, or maybe not shave, just shower, those kinds of things, I understand. But what are they in service for? And largely,
just either shave or decide to grow the beard, but but don't just sort of sit in some weird gray area where you go days without shaving and whatever. Don't do that.
Targeted stubble is also a way to go, but I'm not sure. Just if it's the result of being now I'm becoming Jordan Peterson. I'm falling into this trap. But yeah, so I think that's a lot of why he appeals to those people.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, because he's telling them, a story that I mean, I think people like it when there's something that they can do. Nobody likes to feel helpless. So if you say this is under control, there's a reason that people like hearing that, and fair enough. But also, where it gets pretty bad to me is that it's okay, but also legitimately, this guy probably has a lot of very real complaints that he should have about this restaurant, because most people who've worked in restaurants know that those are, even as capitalist workplaces go, not ideal, places to work typically, right? And it seems like it's very legitimate that he should be upset about that. And there are constructive things that you can do about that, that are very different from the Jordan Peterson advice of just get there. I don't know. I remember, Mike, I cannot do the Kermit the Frog impression. I'm not going to try, but Michael would always do this thing where he'd do his Jordan Peterson impression, and then he'd say, go through all this stuff about mystical insights about the twin snakes, and and it's all this really trippy stuff, and then the conclusion is you should show up to work 15 minutes early. That's ultimately that's ultimately where it's going at the end. And it's I don't know. I mean, again, it's maybe just a simple-minded kind of predictable leftist point, but it's doesn't it seem like another constructive thing you could do would be to maybe start a union at this restaurant?
Yeah, or I mean, I think the alternate vision that we're trying to hone in on is one that validates the existence of bad workplace experiences and agita and tension between bosses and workers, and one that says no, that's a legitimate thing, as opposed to, oh, I'm gonna collapse in on myself and make sure that, you know, I'm the best person I can be, while kind of denying that experience that I had. And so, I mean, really, I think what's also counterproductive from a, you know, personal standpoint for this person, fictional or not, is that it is like not we are, I think, on the left offering a self-actualization vision, as opposed to a put your head in the sand, but while also like pedaling your feet to work the machine.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, and look, I mean, I could see even saying that, like, oftentimes people on the left, like, maybe, you know, don't get the balance of this stuff right, that, you know, that you shouldn't give people the impression that, like, it's not legitimate to try to, you know, like, focus on trying to individually make your life better, you know, make some room for yourself in the world. These are all, like, good and healthy, you know, things, and you know, and there are cases where you should take responsibility for, you know, bad things in your life, etc. But also there are legitimately cases where you, like, there are you know, there are many cases where there are bad things going on in your life that are not traceable to you having a good attitude, you know, about them, right? I mean, I'm just kind of imagining, you know, the version of Jordan Peterson, you know, it's like people are like trying to find ways to escape, you know, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, you know, being like, okay, I mean, you could focus on what's good about this workplace, you know, or you could complain about this.
Oh, the handles, they're not cold when I touch them. In fact, you know, they're scalding hot. I don't know.
Yeah, no, exactly. So now this is Jordan Peterson, but of course there are you know, there are many mansions, you know, many rooms in the mansion of the American right, and
I thought
and
you were making a Joe Manchin pun.
We'll get to that, but you know, all right. So Jordan Peterson just wants you to accept hierarchies, and, you know, and he doesn't think that poor people have any legitimate complaints, or working people. But you may have heard now, like, you know, year of our Lord 2021. Now a bunch of right wingers are populists. They care about little people,
mm-hmm.
And one of the people that I'm told cares the most about, you know, about the, you know, working people, about, you know, about having, you know, pushing back against elites, you know, about this, like, populist version of conservatism, is one Josh Hawley. So I thought, what's Josh Hawley been up to, you know, for the last little while, and not, you know, on a day-to-day level, you know, what's he doing in the, you know, in the Senate, or, you know, all of that, right? But, like, you know, big picture, like his vision of the world. And so want to go a couple months back here, you know, take you back in time to the end of October. There was a national conservatism conference, and Josh Hawley spoke at it. And want to just play the beginning of his remarks at that conference. Again, remember, this is the big advocate of this like grassroots, pro-working people, populist conservatism. This is what it looks like.
It's a pleasure to be back. I had the honor, as some of you will remember, of speaking at the inaugural National Conservatism Conference 2 years ago. After that speech, the press said that I was a racist, a fascist, and a Nazi, if memory serves. So when Yoram invited me to come back this year, I said, what's to lose? I mean, how could he say no? When I was here 2 years ago, I spoke about the left's ambition to create a world beyond belonging, a place where community and shared culture, our culture, counts for little. Tonight, I want to talk to you about another aspect of the left's attempt to fundamentally remake America.
All right, so gonna play a little game here. Can you guess what the other aspect of the left's fundamental attempt to remake America is that he's going to talk about now?
The feminization of America.
All right, let's see. You know,
I
judges,
haven't heard this yet, but this has been Hawley's, like, you know, he's been banging this drum for a few months now.
All right, let's see where he's going with it.
I want to talk to you about the left's attempt to give us a world beyond men. We need at a time of reckoning, as we speak, The left control the commanding heights of American society. They have the White House, the House of Representatives, the Senate. Their voices predominate in the news media,
let's
in
pause this
Hollywood,
for a second.
arguably sports, and
Arguably sports.
Yeah.
Arguably sports. Yes.
That was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, again, like my literacy in these like specific right-wing grip, since joining the Majority Report, as you know, it has just it's gained leaps and bounds for sure. So, but yeah, that's been his thing, right? That's something that Tucker Carlson's also on. He's basically saying, oh, China's outworking us because they do not have feminine men in the military, and they don't. They are uniform and they are strong and they are masculine and unabashed about it. And we're basically soy boys. Look at how our traditional gender roles are slipping away from us. And so, I think this is Hawley's way of carving out his appeal to.
talk to you about the left's attempt.
To like all good. To like a Ted Cruz demo in the 2024 Republican primary when he eventually runs. He was also on a podcast with his wife, talking about basically how video games and porn are feminizing men as well. And so, okay, like who you're trying to appeal to there. You're trying to get some of that a slice of that pie. And I'm telling you now, I'm calling my shot when they're battling it out on the 2024 primary stage, Cruz and Hawley, and they're talking about moral depravity. Hawley's going to bring out the big guns at one point and point out Ted Cruz's certain salacious Twitter activity. And then we're going to have a real fun primary on our hands.
Yeah, that would be something. So, all right. So earlier, he's saying that what he said back in 2019 when everybody was calling him a Nazi and all that stuff, which I'm sure is very, 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 very unfair. But I don't know what he possibly could have said to but he said what he was saying back then was that the left is trying to eliminate a sense of belonging and. Just take it as is. That's confusing. Why is the left against belonging? What's going on there?
I unlike conservatives, we don't want to build an inclusive society in which everybody has access to things like healthcare and education. And wait, no, it's actually the opposite. We had an amazing guest today on the Majority Report. I'd encourage everybody to check out the interview about the history of American conservatives' populism, which is, the book is called I, the People. And it's a misnomer, obviously, because, if you want to take populism on its face, it is something that is meant to uplift a large portion, the people, right? But conservatives have created since the 1950s on their own definition of the people, one that is exclusionary in its definition, anti-Black in its definition, anti-women in many ways in its definition, unless it's a part of like the nuclear family, which is also defined by the American conception of neoliberal capitalism. Like if you exist in this nuclear family, you are participating in our economy and in our culture in the exact way. So that's like one of the many ways that they can pretend to be for the people, but the people, even in and of itself, in the way that they articulate it, is by definition exclusionary. So Hawley is very much in the like the next evolution of how they've tried to present themselves in this way, since Reagan's speech in 1964 for Goldwater and on. Like this has been that vision, and it's just become more like the Tea Party types and the Marjorie Taylor Greene types. They've become a bit more nihilist, but like it's a different flavor than what he's offering. He is offering the same vision fundamentally.
Yeah, I mean, so you're talking about the ways that it's exclusionary, which is certainly true, and I mean, also just to like stop being cute about it. I mean, I think what he's saying when he talks about like, the left not liking the sense of belonging and all that, he means immigrants, right? Like that, like that.
Yes.
That if you have, if you have the wrong sort of people coming in and speaking other languages and I don't know, eating food that's not bland or something, then that's gonna fuck up the sense of belonging. I'm not quite sure how it works, but that is 100% for sure what he means by that.
Seasoning is a terrorist threat.
Yeah. So that is what's going on there. But like the other thing I'd point out is that okay, so let's strip away all the groups that are being excluded there. But even for whoever's left, what exactly does Josh Hawley want to do for them?
Yeah.
Like as far as I can tell, it's like, okay, so, he wants to kick out the immigrants. So I guess what they'd say is that'll, lead to native born workers, having higher wages, although we're not going to like make sure by actually, raising the minimum wage or, making it easier to organize a union or any of that stuff, because Hawley is for exactly none of those things. Certainly not for like Medicare for all. I don't like it. It just seems like the thing that makes these guys populous is that they use the word elite a lot, or like every once in a while it's I'll hear I don't know, maybe this is already passe, but like a couple months ago, like I'd hear a lot of woke capital or woke corporate America or stuff like
woke
that.
CIA.
yeah. But
Well,
it's like I mean, it just seems so obvious that the thing they object to about woke capital is the woke, not the capital.
Yeah, I mean, he hit the nail on the head, right? Like, I cringe at and I'm sure that we would have very similar views on like some of the ways that some members of the Democratic Party present themselves with wokeness. Like, that's an easy target. It's an easy cultural tension that can be capitalized on because so much of it, as presented, is inauthentic. There is authentic like inclusion, but that's not represented in electoral politics and by politicians or by corporate America in any real meaningful way. It comes off as pandering because it is. So then you can capitalize on that inauthenticity and make it seem like you can hide the ball. Hawley represents all of those corporate interests and all of those elites that him and Tucker, as maybe you're thinking of as well, are railing against. But because they have taken on the aesthetic of like the cultural part of society that the right wing doesn't like, then no, they're the elites. They're all in the same group, and we're the ones. We are the people. We are the true America, the vision that you want. And so,
yeah, right. I mean, like, yeah, Tucker Carlson. I've been hearing for years about how, he's really like something different from like the old kind of Reaganite, Wall Street, Republicans. But then like you ask, okay, like show me the best evidence for this. Like what's give me Tucker his most economically populist. And I don't know. I mean, I'll see people like, like last year, almost 2 years ago with the primaries going on, there was like some Elizabeth Warren plan that he did a segment where he said nice things about it, but it's like it was the most milquetoast thing ever. It was like oh, we're gonna have like more apprenticeship programs or something. Which sure, great, like awesome, but like that's such like that's setting the bar so low, right? For what counts as a populist. Like I think any of these people, Hawley, Tucker, Steve Bannon, like if all of them have economic views that are to the right, like not just of like Bernie, but I mean to the right of Biden, to the right of Nancy Pelosi, to like possibly to the right of like Clinton in the 1990s, that like what if Bannon had gotten everything that he wanted in the Trump White House, it would have like been taken like the top marginal tax rate up to like almost what it was in the 90s and like used a little bit of it on infrastructure
and who even knows if like that's a sincere position, right? I mean, like if banning was enough. He was saying he wanted to raise the top marginal
Yeah,
tax rate, but I don't.
Yeah,
I don't have any faith in that authenticity of that.
No, certainly not. But I think it is revealing that, like, even when they're like, even what they pay lip service to is pathetic. I mean, like, if there's no actual, again, they don't want to directly raise anybody's wages. They don't want to, you know, certainly not to $15 an hour at least. They don't want to give anybody health care. You know, they don't want to do any of this stuff. But I did cut off the second clip because I was, you know, I just wanted to, it was just funny because, like you'd said, that he was going to talk about the feminization of America, and my God, right? You know, there he was talking about it. So we might have to go back 20 seconds or something. But Jake, do we have that second clip?
I want to talk to you about the left's attempt to give us a world beyond men. We meet at a time of reckoning. As we speak, the left control the commanding heights of American society. They have the White House, the House of Representatives, the Senate. Their voices predominate in the news media, in Hollywood, arguably sports, and of course in our universities. This is their hour, and they're determined to use it. Look, the left know what they believe. They believe that the United States of America is a systemically racist, structurally oppressive, hopelessly patriarchal kind of place. And they say it at every opportunity that they get. It's a dystopia, really, on their view, if only Americans would get woke enough to see it for what it really is. Their message is, this nation needs to be taught how unjust it is to begin with, and then completely remade from top to bottom. That's the leftist project. That's their grand ambition, to deconstruct the United States of America. This work of deconstruction is what unites today's left and draws together all of their various projects, from critical race theory to their economic socialism to their bizarre war on women's sports. But what I want you to notice, what I want to call out tonight, is that the deconstruction of America begins with and depends on the deconstruction of American men. The left want to define traditional masculinity as toxic. They want to define the traditional masculine virtues, things like courage and independence and assertiveness, as a danger to society. This is an effort that the left has been at for years now, and they have had alarming success. American men are working less. They're getting married in fewer numbers. They're fathering fewer children. They're suffering more anxiety and depression. They're engaging in more substance abuse. Many men in this country are in crisis, and their ranks are swelling.
So if you feel like you're disaffected and you don't have a connection to society, and maybe you're not able to communicate with human beings in the way that you necessarily want to, that is the fault of not the power structure, but of like this nefarious feminizing force that the Democrats are trying to implement, and like the war on women's sports. It's just nothing connects, but which is his way of saying they're allowing trans women to participate in sports, as if this is like the most existential political topic, you know, affecting people's lives on a daily basis. But you make it urgent, and then you get to I mean, you can capitalize on the anxiety.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think again, I mean, it's obviously it's funny that, you know, right, the radical left is in control of the NFL, and, you know, and Josh Hawley's, you know, understanding of the world, but also, again, this is supposed to be the big populist, and his explanation for all those things that he listed off, right? You know, people like waiting longer to get married, people, you know, committed suicide in higher numbers, you know, all of these things. His explanation of it isn't, I don't know, something about like economics, you know, people like, you know, like precarity, you know, stagnant wages, you know, like people having to like hustle all the time and like, have like 2 jobs and go home and like get in your car, drive Uber, or, anything like that. None of that, right? It's feminization that people like the reason all of these things happen is that people are just becoming more soy because I don't know, the left like somehow tricked them into it or something.
And you could see why that works when you're diverting from that exact dynamic that you're talking about, right? Because in this country, masculinity is tied to, in many ways, like economic earning and your agency in the job market and stuff. And so if you feel insecure in that way, rightly so, in this current climate, and you aren't able to provide in the way that you want or not able to make the money that you want, okay, like here's somebody saying that is a problem, but it's not the real root of the problem. It's just a very toxic outlet for that, for those very real fears.
Yeah. Do you watch Succession?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like 2 episodes away from the end of this last season that they did, and
you saw the presidential candidate who's kind of Hawley, Tucker Carlson, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I kept thinking about when I was watching that. Is the I don't remember his name, but the guy at the like Freedom Summit or whatever they go to in the show
played by the guy who was in Weeds. Like he was the. Did you watch Weeds?
Yeah, who did he play in Weeds? I watched.
Was he not the guy? All right, now I'm gonna look it up while we're talking. Hold on. You can keep talking. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah. No, I watched like the.
Justin Kirk, yeah, that he was Andy Botwin. He was the.
Yeah. Okay, yep, that's right.
Right.
I can see it now. Yeah, no, I watched. Actually, I know I didn't watch it all the way through, but I watched.
I didn't. The first few seasons were really good, but I feel like it kind of fell off. Which
I mean, they jumped a lot of sharks as it went on, but like I watched like probably a couple seasons longer than I should have.
Right.
But yes, no, I that did not occur to me when I was watching it. But yes, I can see that now, and it's amazing. But yes, the Andy Botwin from Weeds, who's portrayed as the sort of candidate who's like. Yeah, very, very, very Howley, like, very, very Tucker like, and which leads, I think this is a, very, very minor spoiler. I don't feel bad about saying it on air. To my all-time favorite line in that show when the character who's sort of very Ivanka Trump like says that she's going to. She's like horrified by this, right? That her dad's going to back this guy, but he says, we're going to do a family pic, like we're going to take a family picture with him.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, I'm not getting my picture taken with that guy. He's a fascist. He's like, come on. He's like, okay, yeah. I'm not going to stand right next to him, but I'll be in the pitch.
Yeah, I mean, that is, well, I don't want to spoil anything, but like before she joined the family, she was working for like, basically they mixed up Bernie Sanders with some sort of, Bill Clinton type skeevy politician, but he was meant to be a Bernie type. Somebody on Twitter said that he was like, he looks like Anthony Bourdain. He's Anthony Bourdain playing Bernie Sanders. And basically when when her dad gets her involved in posing with that fascist type, that kills any chances if she ever wanted to leave the family business and go back. So, that's what happens when your father's a raging narcissist, but I digress.
Fair enough. So, all right. We've done the like mystical guru conservative. We've done the fire breathing populist conservative. I think we should finish off with a little bit of facts and logic. So what do we got? What do we got, Jacob? What's the last clip we have here?
Joe Manchin was not going to vote for a $7 trillion package because AOC and Ilhan Omar wanted it. These people are out of their minds. They truly do seem to think that like small boroughs in New York govern the entire country, and that senators are not answerable to their home states. And Ilhan Omar joined the crew. She slammed Manchin as well. Here is the horrible congresswoman from Minnesota.
We all knew that Senator Manchin couldn't be trusted. The excuses that he just made, I think, are complete bullshit. It is really disheartening to hear him say that he has been trying to get there for the people of West Virginia, because that's a complete lie. There are just so many things that the people of West Virginia desperately need. And we know that he is not working on behalf of their interest. And I really am just completely disappointed and disgusted by his reasoning.
Well, I mean, if the people of West Virginia don't love Ilhan Omar, I mean, wow. I mean, when she speaks, the people of West Virginia listen. That is definitely a state, West Virginia, where Ilhan Omar, I'm sure, is wildly popular. Her perspectives are super popular in West Virginia. Again, the delusional nature of progressives who think they have a national program, as opposed to the reality of politics, which is you're always cobbling together a coalition to do incremental things. That is most of politics. And that it turns out Joe Biden did not have a mandate for anything remotely like this. It's amazing. And they will continue deluding themselves along these lines, the progressives, which means that Joe Biden should get with the program, right? If he had any brains at all.
Cuts there.
I haven't seen it, like the vitriol in his face, the way his eyebrows like point right down when he's talking about Ilhan Omar. I mean, well, we know how he feels about Muslim people.
Yeah, for sure, right? I mean, he had one of his, he's got this like big list that he made a couple years ago of like all of the stuff that he officially has takes backsies on, that he's like said over the course of his career, and one of them was at the column advocating for mass transfer of Palestinians from the West Bank and also Israel proper. So
did he take back the part where basically he said that they were living in sewage by their own accord?
I think he might have said it was a dumb tweet or something like that. I mean, I don't.
Dumb is generous.
It did not impress me as like. I mean, look, I'm not the people want to grow. I'm all for it. Like I don't want to be. I don't want to be the guy who's like not accepting that, and like holding everybody's past against them. But like,
you don't want to cancel comedians while the world burns.
Yeah, right. No, that's
my
nice.
plug for
that's
you.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah,
let's work it in a couple more times.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want to do that, but also like I mean.
He would have had to show growth, Ben, for you to for that to be either. This is completely consistent, right?
That seems like there's very little pretense of growth there, right? I mean, like if you're just sort of saying like, no, I guess not. It's like the Oliver Stone Nixon movie. There's a scene where Nixon is like going through cutting things from the transcripts of the White House tapes. Is like. Nixon can't say that, it makes me sound anti-Semitic, it's like it just sort of seems like, Ben Shapiro can't say that, like, that sounds embarrassing now. I think that I think there's got to be a happy medium between canceling people for like, their like tweets when they were 13 or whatever, and like just being like, oh, okay, well, I guess he said he took it back. We're good now, right? Even though like I don't really hear what he's saying now in his commentary about this, it'd be all that different from what he said then. But also, if your memory extends all the way back to 2016, Bernie Sanders won West Virginia. So.
But let's be clear also too. Do you notice how he changes the subject so subtly in his argument? Before the Ilhan Omar clip plays, he talks about how Joe Manchin has to serve his constituents and needs to answer to the people of West Virginia. Ilhan Omar criticizes Joe Manchin. Then he says Ilhan Omar is unpopular in West Virginia. But is Joe Manchin voting on a "We Love Ilhan Omar" bill? I was not unaware of that. Actually, when you look at the polling, Build Back Better in its individual provisions, it depends on each poll, but It's like double digits at minimum for the major planks in Build Back Better. Some polls have the entire bill at like plus 30. So. That's why Mr. Facts and Logic didn't really keep his own intellectual consistency there, huh?
Yeah, and I mean, like he's doing like there's a reason he's bringing up Ilhan Omar, even though, right? I mean, it was not like it wasn't the bill to declare, whatever, just like December, 14th, Ilhan Omar Day, like, that wasn't that was the point. But like, there's a reason he's bringing up Ilhan Omar, because it allows him to say that thing about West Virginia without actually having to say his constituents don't want this or that or the other, provision of this bill, or even like the really crazy stuff that was cut from it, already, like paid for people to go to community college, because he I think even Ben Shapiro knows that he can't really say that. Like, that doesn't sound obviously true, but if he says, oh, but is this scary Muslim woman, like clearly they wouldn't like that, right? Like that sounds more plausible than saying that they don't like the bill. I mean, it's the I mean, if you watched the debate that he did a couple months ago with Anna Kasparian, this is the same reason why, like, the sort of pattern of that was, Anna talks about, unions, and Ben's like, okay, but like, what about critical race theory? Right? Like it's because it's all like that. I mean, that's always the deflection, because if he's not going to deflect like that, what's the move?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's the same thing what we were talking about with Hawley there, right? It's aggrievement, and then plan B is deflect.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thank you so much, Emma. This was a lot of fun.
Oh, so much fun. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me, Ben. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Was Emma Vigeland from the Majority Report. Want to play a little preview from the episode that dropped for patrons on Saturday, which is my conversation with Thaddeus Russell about Marx and Marxism, which is a subject we're actually going to teach a class together about in January. So I am going to play you just a minute from the beginning of that conversation, and then I'm going to be back on with Professor Jennifer Burgis, and we are going to be right back to talking about the exact figure that we just finished talking about with Emma, Ben Shapiro, who has some stuff to say about Kant, and you're going to be amazed to hear that Ben Shapiro is confused about Kant, that he doesn't have a good, well thought out take there. So while everybody's minds are being blown by that and everybody's processing that, here is just a minute of my conversation with Thaddeus Russell. All right, I'm now once again joined by Thaddeus Russell in Oakland. Is that where you are?
Yes, sir. Oakland, the heart of it all.
Yeah, birthplace of the Black Panther Party.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I am living. Well, actually, I grew up on the Berkeley-Oakland border, right near the Black Panthers headquarters. They were about 4 blocks from where I live. But now I'm actually deeper in East Oakland, but I'm farther from the headquarters because the Black Panthers were funded by the Berkeley Radicals, so they had to be near Berkeley.
Yeah. I actually remember that in so back. Yeah, I remember. I think it's was this like Bobby Seale's book, Seize the Time. I might be getting mixed up. I read like a few of these way back when. He talks about how like they got the money to buy the first guns from selling copies of the Little Red Book that they bought in bulk at UC Berkeley, which is
exactly.
It's
Says it all.
A wonderful image, kind of summing up a lot of things that were going on there. But,
yes, it does. Exactly. That's what I was born into. I was born into that world specifically. Yeah, in the 1960s. Yeah, it was quite a time, quite a place to be. But yeah, I had Black Panthers sort of around all the time. A couple of them were killed when I was a kid, by the way, and that was interesting, moving. It was the first person I ever met, I think, who was killed was a Black Panther. Yeah, and then Marxism. You know, I mean, it was interesting how the Black Panthers sort of adopted Marxism at first as an expedient, I suppose, to raise money, but then later, I mean, it was pretty genuine. I think, especially Huey Newton really started to at least talk the talk of Marxism. And
I mean, it's hard to say, right?
Yeah.
Because I know, I mean, I think, you know, if we're going to be really honest about this, and it's hard for me, right? Because I can't think about that, you know, particular bit of history without some, like, you know, romanticized gloss, you know, over it automatically, right? You know, but like, you know, I think if we're going to be really real about that, I mean, like, there is a certain element of, like, you know, gangsterism and, you know, cynicism in some of what was going on there. But that said, I do tend to think that was pretty genuine. I think that it was like confused, because it seems like they were coming out of like, I don't know. I mean, like, so they did reject the sort of like this kind of non-socialist sort of culturalist, like Black nationalism.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when you read these old quotes from Huey Newton and Bobby Seale talking about that, like, I mean, it's weird because it's like there are times where like you could be reading like it's all in sort of, you know, overheated kind of new left speak, but like, you know, but there are times when, like, in terms of the content, it almost reads like it's like, man, you know, did Adolf Reed write this? You know, it's like it's very, you know, like, you know, we reject this because we believe in socialist internationalism and all that stuff. But then, of course, there is still obviously an element of racial separatism that, you know, that like fits very awkwardly with that, at least to me.
Yeah.
All right. So we are not properly set up here because I have not had a good chance to set up the space since we got back up to Michigan the other night. You know, visit.
No, so you can see my eyes. I'm kind of looking off into the distance or something, but you know, whatever.
So I hope the audio's okay right now. This is as good as it's going to get right now. But I'm excited. We have a good philosophy segment coming tonight.
We do.
So before we played the preview from the Patreon episode with Thad, where again, you know, we talk about the Marx class we're going to teach Renegade University in January. We'll stick a link to that in the description. Yeah, there we go. Nice graphic. Thank you, Andy.
Hi, Jay Andrew.
But before that, we were talking about Ben Shapiro with Emma Vigeland. Now, that other Ben, you know, has some wacky things to say about, you know, about like day-to-day American politics, which is what we were talking about with Emma.
Wacky.
But say, okay, how about philosophy? What's Ben Shapiro have to say about, say, Immanuel Kant? Well, he wrote a book, which I have unfortunately read from cover to cover, called The Right Side of History: How Reason and Moral Purpose Made the West Great. And we talked a little bit about some other stuff in this book a while back on a night when Jen was sick and Ryan Lake was substituting.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yes, thank you, Ryan, for the philosophy segment at the end of the show. And, you know, we talked about some of the things that, yeah, exactly. Munker died 2108 says, I don't know, but he sure says it real fast.
Probably loud too.
Yeah. So his big contention in this book is that what makes Western civilization so uniquely wonderful, it's a little unclear to me what he's contrasted it to, like is you know, Chinese civilization really bad, you know, like well, what are the ones that aren't so great? You know, he never quite spells that out. But part of what makes Western civilization so wonderful, according to Ben Shapiro, are the combination of Judeo-Christian, you know, religiosity. He uses that phrase Judeo-Christian a lot. So I guess Judaism and Christianity are the good religions, and what he calls Greek natural law reasoning. And it's a little unclear sometimes which Greeks he's talking about here exactly, but He says some Greeks or other, believed in natural law morality and read like the purpose for which things exist off of their natural behavior and somehow glean morality from that. And he thinks a lot of modern stuff is bad because it's getting away from those two things. And so, for example, he talks about Immanuel Kant. So let's see what he says about him. You want to read this or should
I? Go ahead.
All right. Kant thought that the search for virtue could be found not through reason applied to the universe, but through investigation of the moral instincts. We all have an instinct for morality, Kant believed. Reason was limited as human perception was limited. Kant remained skeptical of the human capacity to know the world. But looking at our moral instinct, Kant believed that we could derive a universal morality. This is my favorite sentence, possibly in the book. Kant thus embarked on an almost Platonic quest for knowledge beyond the material. But where Plato looked to the realm of forms, Kant looked instead
to the human heart. As we know, Kant was all about the human heart.
Yeah, this is a pretty strange passage. We could save the other part for later, but so Kant went looking for morality in the human heart.
That is not how I remember it. That is not what I tell my students. Sorry, students, we left out the part about Kant and the human heart. Kant did not care about your heart.
The reason this is very, very, very strange, and I don't know what that other Ben read in Kant that led him to think this, or what he read about Kant that led him to think this. This does sound like something that it would like show up in a paper or something. You'd be like, wait, what? Did I misread that? What's going on here? So Kant Kant believes that morality is an extension of rationality.
Yes, that's the one thing that I try to drive home to my students. That's at the basis of all this, is that Kant is really in love with rationality. That's what's in his human heart, is rationality and the love for such. So this is all very confusing.
Yeah, so Kant's one principle of morality, the categorical imperative, says, and Kant has a couple different formulations of it. He says are equivalent. One of them is about not treating other people, not treating humanity, whether your own person or that of another, as merely a means to an end, rather than
every philosopher got to pick an organ.
And as an end in itself. And then the other one is only act on that maxim that you could will to be a universal law. What does that mean that you could will to be a universal law? What does Kant mean here? Because I think it's going to be important for
that it's possible.
Right. So not that you would like it.
Yeah, Kant doesn't care about what you would like. It's another thing I try to drive home to my students. Kant does not care. Anything that you could say, but no, he doesn't care. So could just means like logically could.
Yeah. So don't only act on that maxim that you could will to be a universal law, is only follow rules that it would be possible for everybody to follow, and in particular, it would be possible for everybody to follow without that undermining your reason for acting that way in the first place. So Kant thinks that you have like an incoherent set of motivations. I guess be one way to put that. If you're doing something for some purpose, but if everybody followed the rule that you're following, then that purpose that you're doing it for wouldn't be satisfied. Like, I don't know, what's a good example of this?
Well, his own example that if you made a lying promise, then your intention is to make a promise, But then if everyone made lying promises, then no one would believe promises anymore. So you're willing that they're both be and not be promises. And that's inconsistent.
Yeah.
So that is not a thing that you can rationally will.
Right. Which is the key thing, that you can rationally will, right? Not that it would make you happy if it happened. Not that, it's not how would you like it, if other people, if other people did that. This is not at all Kant's point.
This is not the golden rule.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the golden rule. And it's also not rule utilitarianism, which I think, as far as I can tell, it's really confusing. But the one other thing Ben Shapiro says in this book about Kant that gives some kind of clue as to what he thinks is going on here. Actually, there's also a line we didn't quote where he says this echoes the golden rule. But he says one other thing in the book that maybe helps make it clear what he thinks the categorical imperative is. So this is where he's making his big objection to it. So remember, Kant has gone on his quest into the human heart to find the essence of morality, but Shapiro thinks that it didn't work, that the quest was unsuccessful, that whatever he found in the human heart has not told us what objective morality is, because he says, quote, Kant's categorical imperative isn't objectively mandatory. Why not simply assume that everyone else should abide by Kant's rule and break all the rules yourself? So I think what's going on there, as far
I'm glad you have an idea of what's going on there, because I sure don't.
This actually would be sad if at this point I've read and watched enough Ben Shapiro that to start to have some idea of what's going on there. That's not a sign that I've spent my life well, but I think maybe what's going on here is that he thinks that the point of the categorical imperative is you should you should follow such and such rules, because if everybody followed those rules, then there would be like good consequences. Everybody would be happier.
Yay!
Less suffering, or whatever. There's a better outcome in some way or another. That if that's not what he thinks it is, then I don't understand that last quote at all. But if he does think that's what it is, then I understand what's going on in the quote. But it's just a little. I don't know why he thinks that's what it is.
No, I don't know either.
So just to
the idea that it's not mandatory is just really. I don't even know what word to put on it, really.
Yeah, I mean, right. So,
because if you get anything from is that it is required of everybody. I mean, he even distinguishes between imperatives that are hypothetical, which apply to you, depending on the goals that you have, and this one, which applies to literally everybody, which to me sounds like mandatory.
Yeah, right. So Kant clearly thinks it's mandatory, and either Shapiro's saying something really super confusing, which is that Kant doesn't think that, which would be bizarre if that's what he's saying, because Kant makes a very big deal of thinking that. Or what he's saying is, well, Kant thinks that this would be mandatory, but it's really not, because really some clever person could say, you can't fool me, Mr. Kant. I've figured it out, right? Like I can.
Herr Kant.
Herr Professor Dr. Kant. I figured it out, right? I can just jump the subway turnstile of morality here, and as long as everybody else follows these rules, then we'll have these good outcomes.
Especially for me.
Right, sure. Yeah. So I don't need to follow them myself. I'm actually gonna be better off if I don't act morally, but everybody else does, then that'll be the best for me. So why is this not a good objection to Kant? Or to rephrase that, maybe, like, the whole objection is premised on thinking that what Kant is saying is...
I mean, it's not a good objection because it doesn't address anything in reality.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I do tell my students that their objections need to, address reality for them to be good ones.
Yeah, that's fair. I go along with that. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess maybe it's a good objection to the view that he's made up in his head to argue with, but
well, who cares?
I don't think it's a good objection to Kant, right? Because Kant is not saying you should follow the categorical imperative, because if you follow the categorical, if everybody follows the categorical imperative, will have good consequences. That's really, really, really far from what he's saying.
Yes. Very much so, yes.
Like, utilitarianism says that hi
Shabazz. Oh, he has kitty litter on his nose.
Yeah, we'll see if he yeah, there you go. You can just see his tail there. So utilitarianism says that what makes things good is that they, what makes actions good is that they lead to good consequences. And
what makes actions right, I think you're trying to say.
Right. That is, sure. I mean, I also said Mr. Kant a minute ago. So
okay.
There you go. Got to set the bar low here. So, yeah, according to utilitarianism,
the good and the right are always lined up.
Right. So good consequences and right actions are always lined up. So not only, and they're not just lined up in the sense of
they are literally the same thing.
Right. Because
Shabazz has 2 Z's, by the way.
Yes. So I guess you could just have the view, I don't know, you do the right thing, then God will always arrange it such that, it leads to good consequences or something. But the utilitarian view is that literally what it is for something to be a right action is that it leads to good consequences, better consequences than any of the alternatives. That actions are morally better or worse than others, depending on whether the consequences are better or worse than others.
The consequences are better. The action is righter.
Is righter. Okay. You were giving me a hard time about saying good when I should have said right.
See, I'm trying to make you feel not so bad.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So Kant is saying something just radically different from that, right? Kant is saying that morality is not what the utilitarian thinks morality is. That morality is about rationality, like we were saying before. That the reason, so Kant, is a deontologist, which means that he thinks that actions are right or wrong in themselves. They're not right or wrong because of some consequence they'll lead to. They're not even right or wrong because of your reasons for doing them. Although he thinks that you only get moral credit for doing them if you have the right motivation. But the action itself is right as long as it follows the categorical imperative. It's wrong as long as it doesn't. And the thing that Kant thinks makes actions right or wrong is that he thinks that if you're
Sorry, Lucy's snoring.
Yeah, probably that's not making it through, but she is she does snore at a really.
Kathy says she needs a CPAP.
Right. So what makes morally better action? What makes morally right actions morally right? For Kant, is that it would be irrational not to. He thinks that if you're not following the categorical imperative, that means that you're following a maxim that's like not ultimately consistent, because either it wouldn't be possible for everybody to act that way, or it couldn't, or it wouldn't be, even if, or it wouldn't be possible for everybody to act that way consistent with your reason for acting that way. And so, he thinks that you should follow these rules
D-pup
all the time, and that it is mandatory, not in the sense that, oh, you better do this or else we won't have good consequences, which is what Ben Shapiro seems to think, but it's mandatory in the sense that anybody who's not doing this is being irrational,
which is the worst thing you can be
if you're Kant.
Well, yeah.
According to Kant, that's the worst thing you could be. And there are lots and lots of good objections to this. Like that there are lots of people who have thought deeply about this who are not Kantians, and who have good reasons for not being Kantians, who either because some of the results of this are really counterintuitive. If the axe murderer comes to your door and says, who's the murder victim going to be?
You.
Okay. So Jen answers the door, and there's the guy standing there with the bloody axe, and says, "Is Ben here?" Jen, would be violating the categorical imperative if she lied to him. And there are also good objections in the other direction about not the other direction, but a different direction about thinking like, okay, is this really what we morally value? Like forget whether the particular actions that it tells you to do line up with what our intuitions about which actions you should do, but ask a more basic question. Is this what we think that like being moral is? Is it really all about rationality purely? And you might think no, right? I mean, if I don't know, let's this time instead of having an axe murderer come to try to kill me, let's say I'm drowning and there's something that Jen could do to save me. And I think Bernard Williams talks about this, the one thought too many objection. So there's some like life vest or something she could throw into the water to save me, and she pauses midair and says, "Hold on, is this rational to do? Let me just run through the categorical imperative in my head for a second and see." It's like, okay, let's see. If I didn't do this, would I be acting on a maxim that? All right, checks out. This is what I should do, right? Like even if the whole process took like 1/1,000,000th of a second, right, and it didn't make it any less likely that I'd be saved, I'd be kind of morally disturbed.
What if I tried to count up the U-tiles instead? Hang on, let's carry the one. Yeah.
U-tiles meaning units of happiness or unhappiness. That'd be the utilitarian version of this problem.
Either way, that's one thought too many.
Yeah, either way, it's one thought too many.
Or more than one.
Right.
Many thoughts too many.
At least one thought too many. So I think that there are lots of good reasons that Shapiro could have given for rejecting Kant's theory of morality that he didn't give here. But I guess my last thought about this before we're going to go to the post game a few minutes early is just this, which is if you're going to write a book called The Right Side of History: How Reason and Moral Purpose Made the West Great, if you're going to do the thing that Ben Shapiro does, that Jordan Peterson does, that so many of these people do, and you're going to say that you're interested in defending Western civilization.
Hell yeah.
That you are worried that now that I don't even know, that now that with the wokeness and the critical race theory and the feminism and the Marxism and everything.
Oh, that feminism.
That all of these terrible things are conspiring to undermine the traditional values of Western civilization. And you're really interested in defending the tradition of the West against these terrible influences. And by the way, it's always a little confusing that all the things that people list off when they're doing these rants, like, I don't know, if you're interested in defending the West against like non-Western things, you should be like mad about, I don't know, people becoming Buddhists or something. But like,
I know I am.
Yeah, I see about it every day. I wake up mad about that.
Is that why you wake up in such a bad mood?
Yeah, that's the reason. That's it. I wake up much earlier than you wouldn't know. All of those, if you're gonna do that, then it seems to me that you should probably learn a little bit about the classics of the Western tradition. That like if you're,
but you're asking too much, I think.
Like I don't know. It just sort of seems like if this is your big cause in life is defending this wonderful Western tradition, then like, I don't know, read some of it.
Yeah, sure.
My 2 cents. Anyway,
I also want to know if a confusion of Bens, if that's like a herd of cows and a murder of crows, a confusion of Bens.
Yeah, fair enough.
I don't know where that was, but I
yeah,
saw it.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. That's very demanding.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't actually seem that demanding to me. Like you don't actually have to write these books. Like you could just let them go unwritten. But if you are going to write them and you are going to pretend that this is what you you care very passionately about the traditions of the West, then I don't know, like maybe look into them first. And just know some. I mean, it's like
just know something.
Just know something about this, right? It's like Charlie Kirk goes on and on and on about like he loves listing the names of philosophers, and
being able to pass an intro class midterm.
And I've heard Charlie Kirk mention Plato at least like 20 times in various contexts. That that like because he loves listing. Like he likes thinking of himself as a great books person. He loves listing off, Plato, Aristotle, Thomas Aquinas, whatever. And then it's like, oh, and then like, oh, what do you think about the Euthyphro problem? He's like, what? And like, there's nothing wrong with not knowing what that is. I don't expect everybody in the world to know what that is. But like, if you're gonna bring up Plato all the time, it seems like you should maybe read some Plato and find out what's in there. Like,
Aaron Rodgers said that he knew he didn't need to be vaccinated because he had done all this research and he had 500 pages of research, but then he said he had never heard of COVID toe. So
500 pages of research
and has never come across COVID toe.
It's like James Lindsay said that he spent 16 hours a day, most days a week, reading about critical race theory, which was what made him a world level expert. Which I was just very curious about when I heard him say that, because it's like the man is clearly on Twitter at least like 5 hours a day. So if he's reading critical race theory 16 hours a day, he's on Twitter 5 hours a day.
He still has 3 hours.
Okay.
It adds up.
So I guess that's when he's doing all of his sleeping and eating and going to the bathroom and all that stuff is during those remaining 3 hours. All right. Fair enough. Yeah, exactly, Matt. I can't define any Western values, but I know one when I see one. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I'd be equal opportunity about this if there are some like Chinese right-wingers who are going on and on and on about defending the Confucian tradition. I would expect them to have like cracked open some Confucius at some point to find out what he says. And I think the same thing kind of goes for your Ben Shapiros and your Charlie Kirks and Plato.
But we had to look at Aaron
Kant.
Rodgers' toe because at a press conference he took off his shoe and sock and stuck his foot up into the camera so we could see that he did not have any symptoms of COVID toe. So yeah. No, I expected him to look at toes, but he expected all of us to look at his. So, there you go.
Yeah.
I really hope there are some sports fans that watch this thing.
Yeah, no, there are. Yeah. So, and Super Commando has a very good question that I think deserves any more depth that I'll be able to give it in like the last 30 seconds of the show here. So, if you're a patron, ask it again during the post game, and I will answer it then. We're going to be joined by our friend Anders Lee. Is going to be hanging out in the post game. We are going to watch something delightful involving Bernie Sanders and Elon Musk.
Bernie is always delightful.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Just thinking again about that thing when you told you told Michael that whenever you were
yes,
whenever you saw me watching YouTube, I was always watching either him or Bernie Sanders. It was like, yeah, that's correct. Those are the two people you should watch.
Yeah.
So anyway, yes, we are going to watch some delightful content involving Bernie Sanders and Elon Musk. We're going to talk about the Build Back Better debacle, and we are going to celebrate some actually very good news from Chile. So lots of good stuff going on there. Actually, the patrons do not have the post-game link yet, but they will within 2 minutes.
Get on that, Jake.
The main show.
Is that Jake's job? What are you doing over there, Jake?
I don't know. Inexcusable. Yeah, if you want to apply to be the producer for Give Them an Argument, then just hit me up in the chat.
That job just opened up.
Jake is fired. Yeah. No, Jake is fine. That has nothing to do with it. But in any case, patrons will have the post-game link within 2 minutes of the main show ending, and we will actually start it up within 5 minutes of the main show ending. Should be a good time. If you are not a patron yet, that those 2 minutes give you a good chance to go over to patreon.com/Ben Burgis and and sign up. So go do that. $5 a month, and you get the post game after every regular episode. You get the patron exclusive episode every Saturday. And much more. Yeah, patreon.com/Ben Burgis. If you're already a patron, check your email, go to the Patreon, and you should see the post-game link within 2 minutes. If you are a aspiring conservative intellectual who wants to sound smart about Kant and Plato, then you should read some Kant and Plato. Would be my take on that. And otherwise,
Team Snoopy forever.
Left is best.